Then I'd say some of the more challenging parts about painting this figure would definitely be the legs because of these little X's that I had to paint onto those little buckles on his boots. But once again, I will say that the legs were fully painted on all four sides on each leg. Same can be said for the arms and once again the helmet. So everything except the torso was fully painted on this minifigure, and it made for definitely, like I was about to say there, the best Captain America suit that I have ever made, because it is the best Captain America suit that he's had in the MCU, man. So I definitely tried to make the most out of it. For my first of many Iron Man suits in 2015, I've got the Mark 43. This is actually the first Iron Man suit that I made since Iron Man 3 a couple of years ago, so it's been a long time, but the challenge still remained the same when painting this minifigure in its entirety. All of this was painted by me, excluding the front of the legs and the front of the belt piece there as well, which I thought looked just fine, so I painted around that on all four sides of the legs. But like I was saying there, painting on all the detail and making sure that I transition everything on the suit into Lego is definitely always a challenge when making Iron Man suits, because there's just so much detail to pack into such a small minifigure. So it's really challenging to figure out what kind of detail I want to take from the actual suit and then paint onto the minifigure here. So you can also see that I did reuse the Amazing Armory Mark 7 torso piece, which is super useful when making Iron Man suits, and it just makes the minifigures, I mean, honestly, it really tops them off. And without these chest pieces, I don't think they would really look as awesome as they do. So fully painted by me as well. And you can also see that I did actually paint in the HUD for the Mark 43 here. If I go ahead and flip up the face mask, as a matter of fact, let's just go ahead and remove it to give you a look at the new design that I have going for the HUDs. If you guys remember the ones that I had a couple of years ago with Iron Man 3, it was pretty horrendous, but I think this new design that I'm using for the HUDs in Iron Man suits looks way, way better, and so I painted that in to top off this Iron Man suit. But overall, I think it turned out really awesome and definitely one of my better Iron Man suits that I've made, and like I said, my first Iron Man suit that I've made in the past couple of years, so definitely great to be making Iron Man suits again now that I don't feel as burnt out on them. For my first Thor minifigure since the first Avengers film, I ended up actually having to make some pretty interesting decisions when making this minifigure, and those decisions included having to use the Qui-Gon hairpiece, which I really thought I would have used in the Thor the Dark World showcase video if I ever ended up doing that, but I didn't, and I wish I had thought of this earlier. But you can see the hairpiece is definitely really accurate and looks honestly pretty spot on to the hairstyle that he has in the films now. And also you can see that I did paint on a new color for that hairpiece, and also his beard repainted as well with the eyebrows, and you can see I did paint on his wrist and the gauntlets there, and I did use the tiny tactical glove tops, which I did also use on Captain America, but forgot to mention I am using several of those with these minifigures in this showcase video. I did also use a Breakthrough Army Mjolnir hammer, and those hammers that he makes are absolutely fantastic, way more accurate and super detailed, just so spot on to the hammer that is used in the MCU. And so I topped the minifigure off with that, and I did also fully paint the legs. As you can see, painting the chainmail was definitely very time consuming as well, but turned out definitely pretty freaking awesome. And also one thing that I did paint onto, or actually I didn't paint on, this is one of the few things I didn't paint on in this minifigure, would be the Eclipse Graphics muscle arms, but I did paint on the gauntlets onto the printed Eclipse Graphics muscle arms, if that makes sense, man. But also I did use the LEGO Group's new capes. Not something I'm proud of, but it was a necessary evil, because unfortunately, as ironic as it is, I ended up having to use it because the Qui-Gon hairpiece would not allow for me to use one of the original capes as much as I would have wanted to. But for my first Thor minifigure in like, what, 3 years, I think this turned out pretty sweet. This version of Black Widow, I think, turned out to be really awesome and exactly what I was hoping for with this minifigure, but that doesn't mean it wasn't challenging and really time-consuming at times. And so I'd say the most challenging part about making this Black Widow would definitely be the electric staffs that she now has in the movie, or maybe there's actually a real name. I couldn't find it myself, but if you Europeans could let me know without spoilers down in the comments, that would be awesome. But yeah, painting the perfect lines, the perfect like thick lines you see around them, like I can paint lines, but going around a surface like that, a round surface, is very challenging, but it still turned out to be really awesome, and both of them are as close as I could get them to each other. And so the torso is fully painted by me. Both sides of the torso are painted, and they are not printed by the LEGO Group. Even though I based the design off the LEGO Group's torso, I ended up deciding that I would use a black area-like curved torso just for that, you know, realism that that always adds with my female custom minifigures. And I did the same thing for Scarlet Witch, but it turned out really awesome. And the paint job, while it looks really great, it was the most time-consuming part about making this minifigure. minifigure. And then you can see I do have her arms fully painted as well. Absolutely love the way the elbow pads turned out. Those turned out to be perfect and exactly what I was hoping for with those. And she also does have what they refer to in the films as Black Widow's bite, which would be basically like the tasers now in red with like you can see like the little shape that I have on each one. They're actually three-dimensional as well, which is really cool. I did paint a new face for Black Widow here, and I did completely recolor her new newly molded hairpiece that was introduced with the Quinjet, but the front of her legs is printed by the LEGO Group and not done by me. But there you go, man. My Age of Ultron version of Black Widow. There is a lot to get through with this Hawkeye minifigure, so let me just say right now, everything on it is fully painted by me, excluding the face, which all I did for that was just add on this little mark in between the eyebrows, painted this little mark beneath his mouth, and decided to keep it that way because after several failed attempts of trying to make a Jeremy Renner face, I just decided to keep the LEGO Groups, which I think looks just fine. And so I used the Brickforge recurve bow for Hawkeye this time around. I added these little square bits here and here before painting them, and along with the rest of the detail on the front to make it more accurate to its on-screen appearance. And then I ran a thread through it like I usually do for Brickforge bows. And speaking of the bow, of course, I have the arrow, which is also from Brickforge, painted the arrow head of that silver, and then the quiver on Hawkeye here. This is actually a Brick Warriors quiver, and what did I just say? Did I say quiver? I hope I did. The quiver on Hawkeye is fully painted by me as well, and you can see before gluing it on, I painted on as much detail as I possibly could, given how overly complex the thing is in the films. So there's that, and then the entire trench coat is actually a Cape Madness trench coat cut up by me, and then painted before, you know, you guys get the idea. It's all painted, and yeah, so it's a modified Cape Madness trench coat. And then I actually have a little bit of detail painted on the hand, which is absolute necessity for Hawkeye. You know how you guys know what he wears on his hand. It's just, you know, it's something I could not leave out. And then he also has the tiny tactical glove tops, which I forgot to mention Black Widow also has. So yeah, I hear Hawkeye has a pretty big role in the film, given he didn't in the Avengers. So looking forward to that, man. But hopefully I portrayed him pretty well here. Scarlet Witch was definitely one of the more straightforward minifigures out of this entire lineup, and you can see that I actually did paint on everything on this minifigure as well, but I did not paint on the gray lines you see on the front of her legs there. That was all done by LEGO Group, but then everything else was me. Speaking of the LEGO Group, I did swap out their blue Chima pieces that were absolutely ridiculous for this character on, I swapped them out with this these purple discs with the red studs beneath them, and so just getting those out of the way, though, at least they look semi-accurate to her abilities in the film. You can see I did swap out her hairpiece as well for a more accurate one. I have no idea why the LEGO Group did not use this one, and instead they just used that standard brown one that we see in all kinds of sets. And then I also did repaint her face because LEGO Group just gave us Supergirl's face, which was absolutely ridiculous, and I definitely tried to capture the emotion and darkness of her character by adding quite literally some darkness around her eyes with some gray paint. So the face was fully painted, and I think it looks just like Elizabeth Olsen and turned out really sweet. I also did give her the same treatment as Black Widow by fully painting everything on the torso, using this LEGO Group's actual design from their torso by just basically painting all of that onto an area-like curved torso, and the same can be said for the back of the torso, which just has the same minimal detail. She even has the same tiny tactical glove tops that I've used on various minifigures throughout this video, and also I did fix the skin tone problem that we saw on the front of the legs, and I even extended it along with the wrinkles around all four sides of each leg. So yeah, she even has a little bit of detail on her wrist there as well. But aside from that, that is my version of Elizabeth Olsen's Scarlet Witch, and I cannot wait to see her finally debut in the film as the character. But yeah. I have had ideas for how I was going to make the Aaron Taylor Johnson version of Quicksilver ever since the first set photos came out in like summer of last year, and one of those ideas was to use the Luke Skywalker hairpiece painted white, which I think looks much more accurate than like the skater hairstyle LEGO used for the official minifigure. And speaking of LEGO, this is actually their face and their torso, but everything else was painted by me. And the face, I did emphasize the white on the eyes, and I did redo the markings that you see within the mouth, but aside from that, it is the LEGO Group's face. And I decided to keep the torso for one reason and one reason alone, and that reason is the fact that I did not want to lose that like mesh design that you see on it. And while I could have painted that, it would have been really time consuming and really unnecessary, because this color blue, this medium blue, really isn't terribly vibrant looking in comparison to sand blue. So I decided I would just keep this, and it just generally looks pretty good anyway. So also what I did do was I fully painted the arms and fully painted the legs, and that also includes all the little arrows that you see on the front and the sides of both legs, and that was pretty time consuming to do. And I also tried to recreate the shoes that he's sporting in the film as well, also adding a little bit of green to make them even more accurate. But for the most part, I think this minifigure turned out really sweet. The paintwork does continue a little bit onto the back of the legs, but unfortunately Quicksilver is the character who I've heard the most spoilers for already, so that kind of sucks thanks to some jerks on Instagram. But yeah. From what I've been hearing, the Vision is like the best part of Age of Ultron, and I think this is probably one of the best minifigures in this showcase video, and you can see it is fully painted in its entirety as well, except for the detail you see on the front of the face. I did recolor the little gem that he has right above his eyes, which I hear could potentially be the soul gem, but maybe you guys who have seen it in Europe can let me know by using spoiler tags down in the comments. And yes, you can see everything else was painted by me, excluding the purple lining on the back of the head there too. So yeah, now the torso design and the legs, they are my own design for the most part. I did base the torso off of the Lego groups because I really did like their torso design. It's just they printed it and the design onto a pair of sand green parts, which just generally looked way too bright. So I did pretty much, I just decided to make it more accurate by painting my own designs onto some dark green parts. And you can see I even have the tiny tactical glove tops painted in the same magenta color as I guess what you consider the rest of his skin tone, even though he's all synthetic. And the Vision's cape is all fully painted as well on both sides, and you can see I do have a lot of gold. Even though I hear the main color is gold, there are elements of tan. I don't know, but I did add on as much gold as I think would look accurate to his cape, and to basically make up for it, the color maybe not being accurate, you know, the primary color, because like I said, I hear it's actually gold and not tan for the most part, but we'll see in the film. I'm trying to keep it a surprise for myself by avoiding TV spots that he's in. But yeah, the back of the torso is also fully painted as well, and you can see that there, along with all of the gray that you see I did extend all over the head. That was all painted as well, and the arms painted, so you get the idea. He's all painted except for the front of the face, man, but there's the Vision. Holy crap. We are almost through all the figures, and we've got our final Avenger here, Hulk. And in my attempt to make the Hulk big fig that was released with the Age of Ultron sets more realistic, I didn't add chest hair or nipples, but instead, I pretty much added a massive, battle damage, black wash weathered effect to the entire thing. And it was pretty challenging, because at first it was really overwhelming, the entire figure, and it looked really, really heavy in certain areas. So with more olive green paint, I dumbed it down to make it look just like what you see here, and I even recolored his pants to not just be the inaccurate purple color the Lego group has them, but instead the more dark blue, denim color they are in the film. And I actually weaved around all the printing that was already existing from the Lego group on his pants there, and then I like I said, I went over the entire thing with the black shade, and it turned out to look really, really awesome in the end. And I think this big fig looks really sweet, but forgive me for not having a better form of display for them, because I still have yet to find a decent minifig stand for big figs. So I realize this does look pretty ridiculous, but yeah, Ultron is the last one, and then Hulkbuster, and I'm gonna die. So everything involving Ultron, the making of Ultron here, our main villain for our second Avengers film, there was an obvious one major decision, and that decision was to use the Toy Story arms and legs. And as much as I would have rather have just kept him a regular size minifigure, I absolutely could not, because Ultron in the film is 8 feet tall. Tony Stark, when he's in an Iron Man suit, is 6 feet tall, and Black Widow's about 5'6". So having an Ultron minifigure that's even shorter than her, I just couldn't do that. So similarly to what I did with Groot and the Arbiter last year, I've given Ultron Toy Story arms and legs and fully painted all of them in their entirety. The only thing on Ultron here that I did not paint was the torso. That's the only element, and I even painted a little bit on the bottom of both sides of the torso, but for the most part that is Lego Group's torso, but everything else was painted by me, and the details that you see on the sides of the legs do continue onto the insides of the legs, or the parts of the legs that are not visible. Those sides unless you fold them, and so you can probably imagine how time consuming that was. And also one major thing that I did to Ultron here, aside from the Toy Story limbs and the Toy Story pieces, would be the fact that I had to redo his eyes too, because the eyes, the standard minifigure eyes, just did not look right. It didn't capture the personality of Ultron at all, so I took it upon myself to redo those as well, along with painting all kinds of detail all over the head, on all sides of it, especially the back, as you can see there, and especially on the back of the legs. You can see Ultron is just so packed with detail, because he is just, you guys know what Ultron looks like. There's just so much to pack into this minifigure, so I did my best to pretty much bring over as many details that would be recognizable on a minifigure from the real thing onto the figure. And so I think it turned out really, really awesome, and I'm really proud of this minifigure. I understand some of you guys disagree with me using the Toy Story arms and legs, but personally I think it turned out great, and I'm really proud of this minifigure. But you can let me know what you think down in the comments. But aside from that, guys, let's go ahead and take a look at the Hulkbuster. we go with the Hulkbuster by Legoholic for Avengers Age of Ultron, and I am super blown away by how amazing this thing turned out. This was fully designed and built by Legoholic. I need to make that very clear. I had nothing to do with this build's construction, and as a matter of fact, the only few things that I had to do with this was I gave him a few suggestions before sending him on his way when I commissioned him to do this, and Tyler did an amazing job with the few things that I told him, should happen with this build. And those few things were, I had made sure that he was, fully in the loop on the fact that this needed to be to scale with the Hulk Big Fig, and therefore that means it had to look 11 feet tall. And the Hulk is only 8.5 feet tall, so the Hulkbuster, like I said, had to be 11 feet tall, and I think he did a great job by representing that scale here, and that was the number one thing that we made sure, or at least I made sure he went for when making Hulkbuster. That was the number one thing that I said, this has to be to scale with the Hulk Big Fig, and then also while still retaining some of its articulation, and it also had to be able to seat a minifigure, and we had to somehow incorporate the same dome piece that was used on the actual Hulkbuster set. Surprisingly enough, he was actually able to keep a lot of the articulation with this Hulkbuster build, and it has 20 points of articulation in total, 14 if you don't include the articulation in the fingers on its hands, but those articulation points would include the main dome piece on the top there, and that can open, open and close, and then you also have the articulated shoulders, you have the articulated elbows, and the articulated wrists, and like I said, you do have each finger is articulated, and then you also do have the articulated thigh areas here, you have the articulated knees, and the ankle joints are also articulated, making for one hell of a posable Hulkbuster, which is pretty surprising given the fact that this thing can still seat a minifigure. Unfortunately, it cannot seat the Mark 43 that I made with the AMA torso armor because it's just simply too bulky and could not fit inside, but a standard Lego Iron Man minifigure, as you can see, fits inside no problem, and it looks super sweet. Now, granted, unfortunately, I mean, this is just one of the many things that I think, had to be done for the Hulkbuster. All of this has to come off to seat any minifigure inside, but I mean, if you look at the film, I mean, personally, I haven't seen it. I'm only basing what I'm about to say off of TV spots. If you look at the film, it looks like the Hulkbuster actually assembles in midair, and the whole cockpit area sort of comes over him, kind of in a way like this, so it does make sense in a couple ways there, and so it's not really too big of a loss in that regard, so I think that that's really cool. I am fully aware of some of the things you guys have been saying, though, regarding the proportions over on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and I hear you guys, and I totally understand that, but like I said at the start of this segment, the number one thing I had Tyler go for was to make sure this thing was to scale. The Hulkbuster is 11 feet tall in the movie, and the Hulk is 8.5 feet tall, and that's what we did here, and that's what he did, and I think it turned out really great in that regard. Scale was the number one thing to make sure that this was accurate, movie accurate in that regard, and so, I mean, if you had a bigger Hulkbuster, if this thing was bigger, it would have been damn near perfect. I am positive. As a matter of fact, there was actually a bigger version that Tyler did present to me before I told him that it actually still needed to be about 3 bricks shorter than what he had shown me, and that's just another thing that factors in with scale, is the fact that if it was bigger, you would have had one hell of a Hulkbuster, but it would have been too big. So like I said, making it to scale with the Hulk Big Fig was the number one priority at the end of the day. So you can probably understand, with all of that said, why I was pretty blown away by how many things he was able to incorporate and transition from the real Hulkbuster model onto this build here of this scale. And because of the scale, it was just really impressive because you have so many recognizable elements, and those elements being like the gold plating on the forearms here, and the fact that he was able to incorporate the 4 fingers. I've seen a lot of people only incorporate 3 to 2 fingers, which I think is really odd looking, and you also do have the arc reactors on the knees, and all of these elements really stand out, definitely in comparison to the minimal detail that I myself added to this thing. All I did was just add on the arc reactor on this 1x1 cheese slope in the chest there, and then I also painted the details, necessary details anyway, onto this slope here, which actually took quite a while. It was pretty time consuming to do this slope, and then I also did paint on the bolts and a few other details onto both shoulders symmetrically on the other side here as well. And then speaking of that, I also did paint paint on some details onto these 1x2 slopes here, and then once again symmetrically on the other side here to just really top off the Hulkbuster. So of course, I cannot go without comparing the Hulkbuster to the Rhino that he built last year, and you can see that it is absolutely insane just looking at these two builds together. Of course, the Rhino is actually slightly bigger and actually doesn't stand up nearly as well as the Hulkbuster does, but both builds are absolutely amazing, and the likeness to their actual on-screen appearances is just uncanny. I mean, like I said, Tyler has a really great eye for designing these things, so yeah, I think it's just really cool seeing these two things together and just seeing, you know, it's like 2 years in one picture. You know, the Rhino kind of represented a lot in that showcase video last year, and the Hulkbuster definitely represents a lot for this video, so it's pretty awesome. But this comparison absolutely had to happen. Here is Legoholic's Hulkbuster compared to the official Lego Group Hulkbuster, and I said it in the review, you know, I totally understand why this looks the way it does. It's just the fact that it is, you know, playability wise, this thing is great and it's super sturdy, so I understand why this design looked the way it did, but it still didn't help its appearance, nor did it really aid its scale, so that's why this Hulkbuster here absolutely had to happen for this video, because this one simply would not work for a customizer like myself. So I think once again Tyler did a great job portraying a more, you know, to scale Hulkbuster, as you've already seen in this video. So yeah, there you go. I mean, the Hulkbuster, like I said, 11 feet tall in the movie, and the Hulk is about 8.5 feet tall, and then this version of the Hulkbuster that the Lego Group put in their set was just absolutely massive and double the size of the Hulk, when realistically the Hulkbuster is really only a few feet taller than the Hulk himself. So this just flat out would not work for me, and while it still was great for the actual set, it would not be great for this video. So that's why this Hulkbuster had to happen, and hopefully you guys think it is as awesome as I do, because it is amazing what he's been able to do each and every year for these big annual videos that I do for you guys. So yeah, massive thanks to Legoholic for the Hulkbuster this time around. Link to his Flickr will be down in the description if you want to check out the rest of his work. He does some absolutely incredible things on his stream, stuff that'll just blow you away, that's way more insane than what you see here. Tyler has an incredible skill, and I definitely recommend you check it out down in the description below. But other than that though, guys, that is pretty much it for the Hulkbuster and the entirety of this showcase video and everything I have to show you for my Avengers Age of Ultron showcase video, all 10 minifigures and Legoholic's Hulkbuster. So without further ado, let's go ahead and wrap this up.
Oh, so now you're all here!
I doeth not follow.
Did you happen to miss the army of extremist soldiers about to light the president on fire on TV? I was there with you. You left me there!
Well, where were you when Dark Elves nearly destroyed all the realms? Or when Hydra nearly took over the planet with your helicarriers?
They weren't my helicarriers, I just gave S.H.I.E.L.D. the engines, and at least you had Natasha and that guy you found on the street to help you!
He's not just some guy I found on the street, he just got off of 2 tours. Defend Midgard yourselves. Heimdall opened the Bifrost. So then where were you, Rogers?
We're doing missions for Fury.
So this is why I'm such an asshole. Alright guys, and there you go, the showcase video on all 10 of my custom minifigures for the release of Avengers Age of Ultron, along with Legoholic's Hulkbuster. Once again, link to Tyler's Flickr will be down in the description below if you want to check that out. But if you made it all the way through this video, or if you enjoyed this video, or maybe even if you found yourself inspired to make your own minifigures for Avengers Age of Ultron, be sure to let me know by dropping this video a like below, and or your opinion on these minifigures down in the comments below, because your opinions really do go a long way. I do value them quite a lot, man, especially after working on these figures for 16 weeks on and off to make all this happen, and everything Tyler must have gone through, as I already said, to make the Hulkbuster happen. But unfortunately, none of this is for sale. As much as I would love to say that it is, it just simply isn't, because it all takes so long to do and so much time and effort goes into everything you just saw. So unfortunately, none of these minifigures are for sale, because I am only one person with 2 hands, so I apologize for that. But But if you want to keep up with me, you can always follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Links to all three of those are always down in the description below, and there I post all kinds of preview photos of minifigures like these, and I was actually posting a ton of preview photos exclusively for Avengers Age of Ultron leading up to the release for like the past month, and they're really cool photos. They're not crappy, they're actually pretty sweet, and that's why I always want to display my minifigures and present them in the best way possible, even outside of these showcase videos. But the Avengers Age of Ultron is tonight, guys. I cannot believe it. It's 2015 somehow, and I just recorded this video. I'm gonna go die, and I'll catch you guys later. Alright. Bye! Links to all three of the... Gosh damn it. This is the suit I decided to make for the figures of this caliber. Wow. Accurate to the hair color that shit.
I'm gonna show you something beautiful.
Really? And then I painted the shit. You enjoyed the video, heck, if you've been fan, and I help. Oh my god, are we still recording? Crap.
There are no strings on me.
No, there are not.